spell your name for me?
Estella, Estella, M for Martinez, Zermeno, Zermeno.
So, just we're recording now. Do you just want to tell me a little bit about how you got involved in history and how important it became in your life to just be involved in history and get the facts right and correct it?
Because of my paternal grandmother. She was born in Refugio, where all the land that they had was. And she knew a lot of history, and she told me a lot of history. She even wrote a letter telling about what had happened there in Refugio to them.
So your grandmother got you interested in history?
Yes, my grandmother.
And were you born here in Goliad or in Refugio?
Here. I was born here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're a lifelong resident of Goliad?
Yes. We moved to Houston, when I was 14. And in 89, we moved, him and I. He liked Goliad. He's from Houston, but he liked Goliad, so we moved back to Goliad.
Mm-hmm. And did you, study history throughout school, or just that was like your main career, or just something you're passionate about? The
history that I know wasn't told in Goliad, just the bad part of it.
Mm-hmm. So and a lot of people in Goliad or outside of Goliad know it as Goliad Massacre, but that's not accurate?
No, it wasn't a massacre, it was a war. Mexico was fighting for its land. Texas belonged to Mexico. And there was another, if they want to call it a massacre, there was a real massacre in San Jacinto where they had the battle. There, the Mexican soldiers would bring their families, their wives and children. Well, when Ross captured San Jacinto, because, the Mexicans were taking their siesta, and they weren't ready to fight. So Ross' army started killing people. The women and the children and a lot of the soldiers ran towards the river because they were right by the San Jacinto River. And they killed them. And it was so bad that the river turned red from the blood. Now that was a massacre. And it's never been in the history books as a massacre, a battle that was won. They didn't do that. That didn't happen here. Now they killed the soldiers or the fighters. They were all.
So San Juancito, that was a massacre? Was that a battle? Who was that between?
San Jacinto. Mm-hmm. The same battle, the same war. Mm-hmm. The same war. And when they killed they weren't even Texan soldiers, they were from all over. Mm-hmm. The soldiers that were here fighting with Ross and Sam Houston. Those were killed because they were captured. When they left the Presidio where they were stationed, and they were, and Santana's army was coming after them, and they ran up with him in Fanning, Texas, and there they captured them. They captured the white, or whatever you want to call them, soldiers. And
Fanning gave up.
Fanning gave up, and so he brought them back to the Presidio, to La Badia. And they didn't have nothing to feed them. Even the Mexican soldiers were here. They were hungry. So how could they keep them leaving? So they took them out into the fields and they shot them. One group here, another group by the Presidio, and another group east, the Presidio and west. Mm-hmm. And that's when they killed them.
So that wasn't a massacre, or was it different then?
It had to be an execution.
Mm. So instead of the Goliad Massacre, what would be a better title for it?
Execution. I'm not going to deny that, they killed him. It was an execution.
And I had been told by Maclovio that there was some confusion. I think in Spain they said to keep them alive, or they had orders.
Yeah.
One said kill them, the other said, the commander said keep them alive, or what exactly happened with that? The orders, I think the general or somebody said to...
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
One of the generals, and I can't remember, one of the Mexican generals didn't want to kill him. Oh my God, I can't remember the name. Maybe it was Filosola, who wasn't even a Mexican. I think he was Italian. He told the Mexican general, well, he didn't want to kill him. He was in charge, Filosola, and he didn't want to kill him really. And Fanny asked him, not to kill him, but he had orders from Santana, so he had to follow the orders, and that's the reason that he killed him.
And Santana was back in Spain? That's where the orders came from?
No, he was somewhere in the United States. He was around. Santana was around all the time.
So they killed those soldiers because of the orders and because they didn't have food to...
And they didn't have food. Mm-hmm. The Mexican soldiers the same were hungry. Mm. I even have, there's proof right there. I have 2 certificates where my ancestors, the first band that captured the first, well, I'm going to say they want to be Texians. That's where they were, Texians. That was here, that captured La Badia, the Presidio. They were hungry, so he went to one of my ancestors for food. And he did. He brought him food, pigs, a lot of pigs, hogs, I can't pronounce it right, hogs, and for them to eat. And then his father-in-law, when Fannin's men came, his father-in-law also was, Fannin asked his father-in-law also for more meat. So he gave him a lot. He gave him a lot of meat, So, okay. But what makes me happy is after the war, when Texas became a state, these people were run off from Goliad. All the people from here, from La Badia, they were run off because Ross, the general that was over there in San Jacinto, he told Filosola that when that Ross got to La Badia, he was going to kill all the Mexicans, no matter how long they had been here, he was going to get them all killed. So the Mexicans took off. They were, Spaniards and Mexicans, and they took off, and a lot of them went to Brownsville area, and that's where my ancestors, their name was Cabrera. They went to the Galveston, to the Brownsville area. Of course, it wasn't even Brownsville yet, but they went to that area, and it was a runaway scrape. Of course, it's not in history like Gonzales was, that there was a runaway scrape for there, but not for us. It wasn't in the news. It wasn't in the news or in the history books. So these people came back when Texas became a state. The people began to come back from Brownsville, and so they went and charged the land office for the money for the food that they had sold to Philip Dimmitt and then Fannin, and they gave them money. They paid them back some money, and I have the certificates that where they later on was able to acquire them from the land office where they paid them. And that's how I know that the land office paid them back for the food they had supplied for the soldiers.
So you have family members that help provide food to the soldiers? was it the Mexican soldiers that they provided food for?
Yes, no,
Or was it
the
the Texan soldiers?
Texans, the Texans.
So that's why they got reimbursed.
Yes,
Oh, wow.
yes.
I guess I'm curious, your family members were fighting on the side of Texas independence against, or were they on both sides? You had family on.
Those two guys those two relatives that furnished food for them, they were on the Texan side. But you know, those soldiers, they wouldn't put them on the rosters because you know they didn't want to give them land because that's how they were. That's how they were attracting soldiers when they started the war against Mexico. That way they could bring a lot of people from the United States and even from other countries because they promised them land. But to the Mexicans that were here, they didn't promise them anything, so they wouldn't put them in the rosters. But another general, was he a general? Seguin. Seguin. Was he a general? I forgot. I'm too old and I'm forgetting. He had an army, a Texan. He was on the Texan side. He was in San Antonio, and he was on the Texan side. So he was able to recruit Mexicans, you know, from here into his army. So he fought. He fought for his people to get land. And so the Cabreras were able to get, and other soldiers that were with Seguin, they were able to get land here.
So something else I wanted to talk about that McCloviel told me about, that you are kind of the historian of Texas, and a lot of people have to go through you to verify things. Could you tell me a little bit about your experience with that? People contacting you, going through you, you're kind of the mother of Texas history, it sounds like, kind of.
Other people did what? Will you please?
McCloviel told me that a lot of people verify historical things through you, or historians will go through you to kind of verify things. Have you had any experience with that, or?
Some.
Mm-hmm.
Some, but yeah.
So. Yeah.
When she retired here to Goliad, she became very interested in her genealogy, and she became involved in genealogy. Okay, and what she would do is she would go all over Texas to courthouses. She went to Austin, Refugio, and she would collect baptismal certificates, land grant certificates, so everything that she has, that she talks about, she basically has documentation. And that's what she spent from the time she was in her 60s to now. She spent all of her life gathering information based on what she knew about her family and where they lived. She went to, you know, Catholic parishes, you know, Austin, Goliad courthouses, and she would gather names and information of family, you know, land purchases, cattle purchases, things like that, that would help document and piece the history of her family. So that's why a lot of historians come back to her, because she has actual documentation. So I hate to interrupt, but basically I'm just trying to get her to remember that she became very active after she retired and moved to Goliad, and she went all over the state.
Wow.
Gathering documentation. So anything that she discusses, she has documentation.
I did a lot of research, a lot, you know, not just here in Goliad, but all around. And I learned a lot of our history from there, a lot of the history, you know. It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And what else can I tell you?
So your family history is really tied in with Texas history.
Well, yes. my family were the first people that came here, you know. My paternal ancestor, well, he was here. He was born in Texas, in Refugio, in 1732. But my mother's family came from the Canary Islands in 1731. And they settled in San Antonio because that's where they landed. But a lot of them came to La Badia and Goliad, and that's why we had those Cabreras here.
What is that again? The Cabreras?
Cabrera was their last name. Yes, the first man that came with his family was Juan Manuel Cabrera.
So your mother was from, or on your mother's side?
From the Canary Islands, yeah.
And your father, or on the father's side? where
Yeah,
was he
they,
from?
they came from Portugal.
Wow. So that's where your lineage goes back.
His family came from Portugal. And the Cabreras, like I said, they came to San Antonio in 1731, and a lot of them, well, at that time it was only one that came, but then the family increased some. But the people that the Becerras came from Portugal, and they ended up here, and they one of them moved to Refugio to go work, you know, and there he got a land grant. He got, you know, a land grant from an impresario. Mexico really didn't care about. By then, it was Mexico. Mexico had already won its independence from Spain, but you know, Mexico didn't really. They weren't really taking care of the people here. So the impresarios that Mexico allowed in here were mostly Anglos, and they needed people, so to a certain number of people in order to give them a land grant. So Manuel Becerra was able to get one in Refugio, and he got.
He was your great what? Manuel Becerra?
He was like my fourth great grandfather.
And he got a land grant, 9,000 acres, about
9
10 miles east of Refugio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that land is still there, but it's owned by Anglos. How it came through the history, how they got acquired it, you know, that they claim, you know, that they bought it from different people bought it from that age to this year. There's really nothing to show how they really got there. But the story that her grandmother said, they ran him off the property. They murdered the man, and then they would run the women off the property.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, her families that were here in that area. This 9,000 acres or by Copano Bay and Refugio, and that's where those 9,000 acres are still there. But it's owned by families from Victoria.
Wow.
Yeah, people really don't know what the people that were able to get land grants here, the Mexican people, they don't know what they suffered before they lost their land. And actually, if McClovey read the article, that's mostly what's in the article, how my people over there suffered. They were the beginners over there, how much they went through before they turned over their land. But they had a lot of suffering. And finally, they had to get out.
Was the land like stolen from them, or they threatened?
They
killed,
threatened them until they had to get out. They killed. They killed one. See that man over there on the top shelf in the middle? They killed him. But they had already killed others. And they had already threatened another one. I don't have a picture there because I have a little bitty picture, and it's somewhere there on the counter. That Elias Lozano was the name of the man on the top. He was married to the woman on his left.
In the middle up there.
And so The brother was younger than her. There were 3 sisters and one brother that were they were the grandchildren of Manuel Becerra. He was the one that got the land grant, and he had nothing but daughters. He had 2 daughters, and the daughters, one of them married a De La Garza man, and that's where those women come from that are there. That's my grandmother on the middle shelf in the middle. She's the storyteller. The man underneath, next on her left, that was her father. And the lady on her right, that was her mother. They were Miguel Lozano, and her mother was Genoveva de la Garza. But she died right after my grandmother's birth. So the woman, Trinidad, the one on top, Elias's wife, they raised my grandmother. They didn't have any other children. They raised my grandmother. And the brother was married, and he was way younger than them. He was younger than the sisters. But because he was a man, the men got the biggest portions of whatever they were going to leave their children. Mm-hmm. So he had most of the land. And they threatened him. They would come at night and burn his barns and kill his cattle and threaten him. So his wife convinced him to get out.
And this is land that he got through a land grant? Or how did he acquire the land?
The one that got the land grant from the impresario, because the impresario had to get a certain amount of people.
And eventually the other Anglos threatened to steal the land and take it.
Well, the impresario himself was from, I think he was an Irish, I'm not sure, but he was Anglo also. And so the reason that he was giving land to the Mexicans that were already here, they were mostly Spaniards.
Yeah.
Was because he had to have a certain amount of people.
Now, a lot of this history that you have compiled, I'm interested in it's like a personal museum kind of out here. You want to tell me a little bit about how this came about? Because it's really testament to all your research and time.
Well, I didn't intend for it to be a museum that people will be interested in. I wanted to do it for my family because I wanted my family to know their history.
And all of this stuff, it didn't fit in the house, so we got a local carpenter to build this place for us, and she called it an alamito, because that's what her ancestors called the land that they used to have down there, alamito, because of the alamo trees. That's where we got the name of it.
That was the name of Manuel Becerra's ranch in the land. He called it El Alamito. Not Alamo, the Alamito. And it was 10 miles east of Refugio on Copano Bay. And that's where he had his land.
So did it just started getting too big in the house and took it out there?
That's
well, people began to hear, and so they began to come visit and see what I had.
So people will come here?
Yes.
Yeah, local people, here. And people like McLaughlin that are interested in history, that know her. We attended a lot of conferences all over the state, me and her genealogy conference, Hispanic genealogy, and that's where they would talk to her and learn that she knew so much about the history.
And it wasn't just history from way.
Because they could ask her questions and she could answer. Dates, dates.
Yeah.
She's really remembering dates. She's 91 now.
And it wasn't just history from way back. I got interested in the history here in the 1900s because I knew that, there wasn't even a school for us, for my people. And we didn't have a high school until 1933.
Here in Goliad?
Yes. We had Mexican schools up to the 7th grade, and that was the inn. But in 1932, their school teacher, who was, we had a 3-room school with 2 ladies and a man, and they were all Anglo, of course. He talked to one of his students and told him, you'll need to go to high school. So he got him. They had already been going, my father included, to the school PTA meetings and asking for a high school for their people. They wouldn't even pay attention to them. So finally, they included LULAC. Have you ever heard of LULAC?
I think
Organization?
Is it a small town or LULAC?
LULAC is a big organization.
Oh, LULAC. I was thinking of LULAC.
LULAC.
I'm not sure if I'm familiar with LULAC.
So they helped the people from here get the high school open, and they opened it
They
in.
had to go to Austin.
But they had to go to
for
Austin, yeah.
State education board, to complain that the kids were only allowed to go to 7th grade and no more promotion for them. That was it. And Goliad. So the first, we say Hispanic, they call us. We've got all kinds of names. And see that graduate around there?
Yeah.
That was the first student that was admitted and graduated.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wait, where at?
And she has a historical marker.
I got yeah.
At the high school, we had it put at the high school. We were lucky. They allowed us to put it at the high school now.
So
Right at the high school.
and so I have a lot of story about our school here. The one on the left side, all of that is about the schools here in Goliad. So see, I didn't just go back to the beginning. I kept finding out up until a few years ago.
So you found out things about your family, but also Goliad,
Yes.
his history.
I just wanted, that's right, Goliad, because we're from here. And so I found out a lot of history about Goliad,
Is there something you really want people to know that people might have a misunderstanding about Goliad history or Texas or Hispanic history that you'd like to really be vocal about or educate more people on?
Would you repeat that again, please? I'm deaf.
Oh, no, it's fine. I was just wondering if there's something that you'd like, that people might have misunderstanding about Goliad history or your family or Hispanic history that you'd like to maybe correct or educate more people on. Is there
Yes,
something-
yes,
A few things.
yes, there was. It's getting better though. Goliad has become a good town. I like it. It's great. But yeah, there was a lot to learn about Goliad.
And would the main one be the people call it the Goliad Massacre when more appropriately could be Goliad execution?
Yeah, but they don't want to call it massacre. They don't want to call it massacre. They want to call. They don't want to call it They want to call it massacre. They don't want to call it execution.
They have every year they have a reenactment in front of the presidio of the Mexicans and the Texans fighting each other, and they call it the Goliad Massacre. Every year, it's
So-
the Goliad Massacre. And that's, like we say, it was a Goliad execution. But they have it's advertised in Victoria and everywhere. And there's a lot of people that come to that event. And it's just a shooting of when the Mexicans captured the Texans and executed them. That's what it's about. But they call it the Goliad Massacre. And that,
Well,
make that.
when we came back from Houston to Goliad, and I heard about it, and I went to the first one that they were going to have, and I walked all around it. I spent a lot of time there, and they would bring young students, Mexican little children, especially ROTC, and they would talk. They had a lot of stands, where they would have show guns and everything, artifacts and all. And they would talk real bad about the Mexicans, real bad. And there was a lot of young Mexicans, and it hurt me for them to be listening about how bad their people are. You know, that really got to me. And so that's one of the reasons that I thought, you know, they should change it. They could be calling. And I got in big trouble for it, though. I was in big trouble. You know, they went to Texas Monthly and they wrote a big article, and you know.
What did were they accusing you of?
Of trying to change, you know, that as far as they were concerned, it was a massacre.
But you think it's more of an execution because just the circumstance?
Of course, it was an execution. You know, I mean, like I said, the massacre was in San Jacinto.
So with this, do you consider this a museum or just more of a collection of your historical, factual?
I consider it a museum because it's not just my family. I have a lot of other notices here. You know, I mean, I have a lot of other things that happen.
Brandon ours. They're from her ancestors.
Wow. Is that their logo, kind of? The AEC at the top?
At the top,
Oh, I see.
I can't see. I'm blind too, besides being deaf. What does it say?
AC up there on top.
They tried to put their initials. Oh, what's on those little piece of papers? Is that what you're talking about, or something in the top?
At the very top, it looks like AC. So I didn't know if that was the family initial or their logo.
Oh, well, I'm just explaining what it is, I believe. You know.
So with this kind of being a museum, do you welcome the public or do people?
Sure.
Oh, so people are
Everybody's welcome to it.
Could you say that again? I don't want to talk over you. Just talking about everyone's welcome to it.
Yes.
So anyone could stop by, or because it's still your private property. You know, it's on your home.
But everybody's welcome. Everybody's welcome. And I've had visitors from out of town, you know, that have heard about it because they talk about it. They talk about my museum, you know, especially the genealogy associations and we only not belong to them, but we belong to other organizations in Houston, Austin, and San Antonio. And we got to, that's where we met when he was in San Antonio, Maclovio. He probably don't remember us, but we met him there because he always...
He was a weatherman in Channel 5.
And he would attend a lot of the conferences we would have, and that's how we met him.
He really wanted to come. I wish he could have, but he had to, you know. So he might still be able to meet you, or even just. I'm probably sure.
Well, we got to know him fairly well at the conferences. So I was in charge of an annual parade. We had Cinco de Mayo parade in Goliad. So I asked him if he would be our grand marshal coming from San Antonio, and he said, "Yeah, he'd be glad to." And the day that we had the parade, it started pouring rain there in the morning, and it nonstop, heavy. So we had to cancel the parade. So I called him, and he was already on the road to go there. I'm sorry, I told him we had to cancel the parade, so he didn't make it. But he got to know us.
These pictures here, they're pictures of the old people of Goliad. I went around asking.
Why is it so important to you, and you dedicated so much time and effort to it?
It's just that I love history. I love history, you know, since I was a young girl. My grandmother gave me a lot of history, and I wanted to continue learning more. And that's the reason that I went around asking questions and borrowing pictures, and I would make my own pictures from that picture, and that's how I finally said, I got to put all of this together and show it off to everybody.
And do you guys have family reunions, or do you get together with your family? Or?
We used to, but we finally begin to lose members, and there's my oh my God, I can't even speak anymore. My family, there's my family's, what do you call them, where you have all the
family
names?
tree, or
Yeah, family tree.
This is?
From the beginning, yes. That's it over there. I have